Welcome to AstroTwins Radio, your cosmic GPS for life, love, and everything written in the stars. We're Tali and Ophira Edut, the AstroTwins, here to decode the astrology of the moment and help you navigate your destiny like a pro. Hey there, everyone. It is the week of August 17th to 23rd, and Tali here, flying solo in Seattle. Ophi's on a little bit of a summer break. She is busy working on our Human Design for Astrologers course that many of you have signed up for. That's being released all month. So here I am. Sometimes twins have to divide and conquer. Sometimes we do things together. It's just the way it goes. So thanks also to everyone who has signed up for the course. You've been giving us great feedback, letting us know how much you're enjoying learning about human design through the lens of astrology. For those of you who don't know what human design is, it's actually, we like to call it somatic astrology. It's your birth chart mapped onto your body. And, it was something that we have been hearing people talk about and obsess over for years and years. And finally, over the past year, we have been reverse engineering it because we wanted to know, how does this actually fit with astrology? So we cracked the code, and Ophi's been making a really, really great course. So humandesignforastrologers.com. We've been talking about that, and I'll put the link down. We still have our introductory price for that for a little while longer. And so let's get into this week. Monday, August 17th, Mars, the planet of war, in Cancer, its least favorite place. So we don't mind that, actually. We don't mind a little taming for Mars. Is actually squaring for him in this tense 90-degree angle with Neptune, planet of dreams and illusions, which is in Aries. Aries is the sign of war. So what is worth fighting for? Where do we put our energy? I think of Cancer and Neptune as these more protective, caregiving, sacrificial energies. What's worth the sacrifice? And how do we protect ourselves? That's on the agenda this week for all of us. And that could mean a lot of different things because we are in the midst of the eclipse corridor, which is the 2 weeks between the two August eclipses. We already had the first one last week on August 12th at 20 degrees Leo. So for those of you who didn't listen to last week's podcast and want to know more about what that eclipse is all about, you should go back an episode and take a listen. But it was the first total solar eclipse that we've had in Leo since the Great American Eclipse of 2017, the one that people watched all across the country. And the difference, here's the difference. So eclipses correspond to the lunar nodes. So the August 28th eclipse is in Pisces. It's a partial lunar eclipse with the full moon in Pisces. So we just ended about 20-month cycle of the lunar nodes in Virgo and Pisces. And for the past couple years, we've had eclipses hitting the Virgo-Pisces axis. Eclipses always happen with new and full moons. During a new moon, it's a solar eclipse. During a full moon, it's a lunar eclipse. So we have two more in that series. We have the one on August 28th in Pisces. That's the last one in Pisces. And we have one more in Virgo, a lunar full moon eclipse on February 20th of 2027. Meanwhile, starting this February 17th of 2026, we had our first Aquarius eclipse. It was right before the fire horse. We had a new moon in Aquarius, a solar eclipse. And now we have a total solar eclipse happening in Leo with the Leo new moon that just happened on August 12th. So here's what's different. The lunar nodes have moved into Aquarius and Leo as of this past July 26th. I'm giving you guys a lot of dates here, but The North Node this time is in Aquarius, and the South Node is in Leo. Whereas back in 2017 to 2019, when we had those eclipses in Aquarius and Leo, they were flipped. The South Node then was in Aquarius, and the North Node was in Leo. So, what does that exactly mean? The South Node is where we're cleaning up our karma. I also think of it as a comfort zone, a karmic comfort zone, where we may have been riding and coasting along a little too much. And now we're getting the cosmic commandment to take a look and do an audit and assess, exactly what we've been building, what's been going on, where do we need to make some corrections. Then the North Node is this new evolution that we're being pulled to move towards. So back in 2017, we had this Aquarian reckoning with the South Node. So that was making us look at social media, technology, how we were handling that. There was a lot of things that actually have been built since then, but that was when Trump started using Twitter, the first president to ever start using social media, and he was wildly posting. And, Leo, the Leo North Node, was also giving us a look back then at who are the leaders we choose. Well, we're still examining that, absolutely. But that was the year we had the Women's March on Washington and we all knitted our pussy hats. And, you know, there was a lot more organizing going on. It was like the beginning of protest culture really started picking up. There were definitely protests before that with Black Lives Matter, but it seemed like people started coming together and congregating and in that Aquarian way protesting against leadership and also discovering both the limitations of what that could do. So we all also kind of started having to get more involved in politics. So Aquarius and Leo are both associated with politics. Aquarius is kind of the public consensus, the way we govern and organize our communities, while Leo is who's in leadership. So we had a big examination of that starting during those eclipses too. Now here we are, almost 10 years later, 9 years later. And this time around, the South Node is in Leo. And the North Node is in Aquarius. So it's actually a time to examine, you know, how much have we celebritized our leaders? How have we put people on a pedestal? Where have we lost sight of community? How can we connect more as community? Where do we find community? And also, are we falling for demagogues and cult like obsessions, like radicalizing? Where are we becoming radicalized? We have to be careful about that. With this Aquarius North Node, there's a desire to really get out there for justice and do the right thing. But who's pulling the strings of these movements that we're behind? And where's the money going? And where is it coming from? And are we being keyboard warriors, just typing away? And, how do we come out from behind the keyboard and actually interact with our fellow humans? So those things are on the table. It's a similar vibe, but a different one at the same time, because it's sort of an opposite pull. I do think we'll see a lot more people getting involved in political leadership, new leaders coming forward in the coming year and a half, especially as the North Node does stay in Aquarius until March 2028. So we've got a lot of energy moving towards the US presidential election. Speaking of Leo, this is the last week of Leo season. The sun moves into Virgo on Saturday night, August 22nd. And we've had Jupiter and the South Node in Leo together. The lunar nodes actually move in reverse and retrograde always. So they start at the last degree of the sign. So right now, the South Node is still in a late degree of Leo, 29 degrees. Leo, the anaretic degree, as it's called. It's this degree of fate, degree of karma. It's kind of holding all the energy of the sign. Well, on Saturday, at the very end of Leo's season, the sun is going to be at that same degree, a conjunction of the sun and that south node. So the sun is going to be shining its bright rays on our collective karma. What's the medicine? What is the leadership of our world doing? Where are we addicted to celebrity, luxury, money, fame, comfort? What are those things that we are reticent and hesitant and averse to giving up that are standing in the way of some of our collective aims and even our survival, especially around climate and, these comforts that have, come our way since the Aquarius South Node in 2017, the Leo North Node, like the gate, that was pre-pandemic. So that nodal, when the nodes were in that position, it was the rise 2018, the rise of Instagram influencers, online astrology, which is ruled by Aquarius, really blew up with the South Node in Aquarius. Everyone's an astrologer now, but how much do we connect our life experience to those predictions? Are we just addicted to learning and predicting and figuring out what's ahead? Or are we, playing and living life and being in the moment? So I think we've seen some of the shortcomings of that. Leo wants to be off screen playing, it's about childlike wonder. So this is a good week to really get your summer vacation on if you have not done so yet. I've got to say, I'm proud of myself because I have had a pretty good summer. Like summer is often like it is busy because we're always writing our annual guide. And I'll talk about that a little bit because we did announce the theme of our 2027 book and cover reveal. But I think I've really made a commitment to doing more kinesthetic in my body things. And that really dovetails with learning more about human design. So this year I've been gardening up a storm. It's divorce therapy too. I have the house, I've got the garden. So God, I've learned so much about plants and you know, not having my ex here to, parallel play with in the evening. Like we did that very well. And he's an Aries, I'm a Sagittarius, both very project oriented people. He was always like building something with solar or lights or hooking up some gadgetry in the house. And I would be like writing horoscopes or reading a book or whatever. So, there's just something about having another person there that you don't realize until they're not there. So I was like, I need a new evening ritual here. And, that was actually my biggest fear about, getting divorced, even though we had been separated for a while. Slut, I say separated, living undivorced together, AKA roomies with a marriage license, an expired marriage license. So I have put gardening into my evening ritual. I go around and I tend to all my plants. I mean, this is a serious addiction now. Like the West Seattle nursery, is my temple. This place is the most incredible. Like I have hydrangeas and colors I didn't know they came in. I planted dahlias by bulb and they all came up, and I pinched them is the name for like cutting off part of it so you get more flowers. I'm also saving all the dried flowers. I'm making bouquets. I don't know what this is like. I feel like I'm a trad wife without the scripture because but I'm married to myself too. Anyways, my hobbies skew trad wife this summer, but My ideology does not. Anyways, just getting out and doing that earthing has been very, very healing for me. So I hope you guys have had a chance to step away from devices, even though this is a tense and scary time in the world, and, enjoy some of Leo's ruler, the sun, and its rays. And if you haven't, please do. Jupiter in Leo is also beckoning us out. It's now rising before dawn. Morning star Jupiter is here. And I want to give a shout out to an astrologer on Instagram who I've really been enjoying. She is more of a traditional astrologer who, knows all of the Greek and Hellenistic lore, and she's really good at storytelling. It's Katie MQ Astrology, Katie with the CATIE, MQ Astrology. And she did a post and she was talking about how when a planet rises before the sun, as Jupiter is doing, it is said to be strengthened according to traditional astrology. So Jupiter is rising strong right now. Jupiter is in Leo as of this June 30th, and it's there all the way till next July 26th of 2027. And personally, I've been loving Jupiter in Leo. Jupiter was in Cancer before that, which is its exalted position, its favorite position to be. I'm happy for what it did for a lot of the Cancerians I know. Like, I mean, some of you really faced down some trauma, others of you, a lot of you actually did. One Cancer, I know our beloved Jennifer, who's on our team and ships your books, is going full on with her DJing, and she's one of the only female DJs in Colorado that spins vinyl. So she really blossomed into that. But Jupiter, in Cancer has also driven up a lot of xenophobia, the ICE detention centers. Cancer's pretty, my home, nationalistic. The World Cup happened with Jupiter in Cancer, interestingly enough. The ongoing fight for homeland with Israel and Palestine and also other places, Ukraine, Russia, like land-based wars all around. And even just culture wars too. So here we are in that, and Jupiter's now moved into Leo, and I like what Jupiter's doing in Leo. It's bringing more nobility to leadership, more heart-centered, creative, welcoming energy, whereas Cancer, it tends to be a bit more closed off. Now, this Wednesday, we do have a quarter moon, a first quarter moon, and the first one after last week's eclipse, the new moon, total solar eclipse in Leo. Was like, "Ooh, I could do this, I could do that. Wow, look at this. Oh my God, whoa." Everyone's living out loud. And then quarter moon in Scorpio comes and calls for some discernment, which is always a good thing, even though I'm talking about how much I love Jupiter and Leo. Quarter moon in Scorpio is like what to show and what to reserve. We don't have to lay all our cards on the table. We don't have to put everything out there. It's not necessary always. Now, Friday, another call comes to be a bit more balanced in how much we share. Venus, planet of love and conviviality, is in Libra in its home sign till September 9th, but it opposes Saturn in Aries. So how much togetherness? This is an interesting placement because Venus in Libra wants to negotiate, wants to have peace talks. And we're finding out that an Iran deal just fell apart again. And Trump is blaming Oman for it. And here's Saturn in Aries, a staunch, like unyielding energy that's like, we will not compromise on our core principles. And so negotiations without, genuine integrity. I think Saturn in Aries is like, if you're going to say it, you got to keep your word. Be a person of who can be trusted. Even if you're being a maverick, you still have to stay in alignment with your word. Now, again, Monday today, as I'm recording, Mars is squaring Neptune, as I mentioned earlier. The whole idea of, any kind of negotiation in war not falling into some slippery slope of illusions under that. I mean, this is a transit that comes around once a year. So it's definitely hard to know who to trust, even though people are showing their asses this week with all the Leo energy. We've got that quarter moon in Scorpio, making everyone a bit more strategic as well. And Saturday, the sun, like I said, is going to be shining on that south node in Leo, right before Virgo season begins. We hand fixed fire. Leo is fixed fire sign. I think of it as this hearth, fire that's contained, so it gathers a lot of heat. Then it moves into Virgo, which is mutable earth, the changing, the growth, the harvesting, the bearing of fruit. Plants, as I've learned this summer, I've got a zinnia garden full of seeded, I planted some seeds. I've got poppies, I've got zinnias, I've got dahlias, I've got a beanstalk going. I did a bunch of awesome perennials as well, foxgloves. I've got a hibiscus, I've got rhododendron, a butterfly bush. I'm like, these plants are divas, though. It's like they each need their own kind of soil, their own kind of fertilizer, their own kind of treatment. I even planted a citrus tree on my sun porch. So I've committed I lost a husband and I gained a harem of plants. I hope I haven't painted myself into a high maintenance corner. I've joked before. I'm Sag, I could have a harem. Well, no, thank you. I've already got one with these damn plants. And no, I enjoy tending to them. My Cancer South node. I'm tending and befriending. And yes, I do get out among humans as well. But Virgo season coming up, I don't know. I might just spend until September 22nd only talking to plants. Doubtful, but possible. Let's talk about what's happening in the news. Here we are in the eclipse corridor, and there's lots of surprises that can come about. Eclipses are surprising events. Nothing is going as it seems. Okay, we have a new moon, but now we can't see the sun. It's blocking out its light. Or we have a full moon, but all of a sudden it's red. Things that are out of the ordinary, things that are, shadowy, doing our own shadow work. Very sad news. Hayden Panettiere, a Leo, who was an actress and in Heroes, as well as a few other shows like Ice Princesses. She's passed away at the young age of 36. Cardiac arrest is what they're saying, but she wrote a memoir recently, and she dealt with a narcissistic mother, an abusive partner, postpartum depression, alcoholism, and we don't know the whole story, but rest in peace, Hayden. Always so sad when anyone dies, but someone so young as well. And we had the Tupac murder trial beginning this week. On trial is Dwayne Keffy D. Davis, who's 63 and was a former leader of the Southside Compton Crips. Now, it was 30 years ago that Tupac died. 30 years ago, September of 1996. And Saturn was in Aries then. It was in 5 degrees. It was at 5 degrees Aries when Tupac died. Now it's at 14 degrees, but it'll be retrograding back a bit. The fact that this came about again, when it's the Saturn return of Tupac's murder is interesting. And also, Tupac was a Gemini, as many legendary rappers are. And we have Uranus in Gemini, so which rules, Uranus rules our culture, our media. So it'll be interesting to see if this, even 3 decades later, if any kind of justice will be served here. Another surprise is that the US Supreme Court declined for the second time to hear Trump's appeal of the $5 million verdict in favor of E. Jean Carroll after the jury found him liable for sexually abusing and defaming the former Elle magazine columnist. E. Jean is a Sagittarius. She wrote the most hilarious, saucy, spicy Elle magazine column for decades. And we were always proud to be colleagues of hers. We chatted with her a couple times on email. Never met her, but she's a badass. And yeah, he was convicted of, sexual abuse there and can't get out of it and has tried now. So the US Supreme Court has very much been doing the president's bidding. So it was kind of a eclipse surprise that they didn't go for that. I also recently found out that the government started plowing through the Big Bend National Park in Texas, saying that they were building a road for Border Patrol. That's Tom Homan, that was, what they needed to do to protect the US-Mexico border. But there's very little use of migrants in that area. So construction has appeared to halt, even though they tore through a bit of, the woods there. So interesting. We'll see what happens. Again, we have to kind of wait for the eclipse corridor to close. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is retired from government but seems to maybe be cooking something up, she's a Gemini, is actually getting some interesting attention because, even though she's known for conspiracy theories and racism, homophobia, just hate speech, anti-Semitism, has been actually kind of making a little bit of sense in her new anti-Trump stance, anti-MAGA stance. She claims that there have been talks among the executive branch to use nukes in Iran. I don't know if that's just like a show of force, but this is par for the course, this threat, at least, and the discussions of nuclear weapons with this summer's, and it's going on, into next year, this minor grand trine formation between Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune. So Pluto in Aquarius, Aquarius rules technology, space, things that fly through outer space, missiles. Pluto is, the things that are buried underground, uranium. Is trine Uranus and Gemini. So they're in this unstoppable, unfiltered angle. So, uranium, Uranus, like exploding things, combustible things, and just like pet grievances. That's flowing freely. And in between them is like, if you kind of picture a pyramid, a low pyramid, if you were to draw a line between them. In between them is Neptune in Aries. Neptune puts us in a trance and, a trance over war and fighting wherever we lost sight and gotten so, I must do this, I must attack. The fact that nuclear weapons are being, trotted out as a threat is frightfully in line with the planetary formations of 2026 all the way through 2028. So I think we're going to see autocrats throwing their weight around. We've got that South Node conjunct the sun. on Saturday in Leo. So where do we see just, somebody get him in a food cart and far away from the nuclear codes because we don't need any, shows of Leo pomp and circumstance and narcissism and ego tripping causing any more destruction. Though sadly, things are not in the greatest place right now. And now the North Node is out of Pisces and into Aquarius, the sign of the water bearer, from Pisces, the ruler of the seas. And what's been coming out during this eclipse corridor are stories from the extended deployment of the ship, the USS Abraham Lincoln, in the Middle East. The sailors have been aboard the ship for 9 months, and it's triggered a mental health crisis. And a couple of sailors have even attempted to jump overboard, is the report, and family members are pleading for relief. So a ship is on the way to relieve them, but it's going to be a while before they see land again because they have to also come on back. So just getting those stories, it seems like there's always a story coming out nowadays, the 24-hour news cycle that we live in. But what do we do with these things? What do we do? We every year pick a theme, and this is the year of the unbridled spirit, 2026. And if you don't have a connection to spirit, to being a spiritual being, having a human experience, it is excruciating to be in this 3D world sometimes. It just feels like it's all too much. And even if you do have a relationship to spirit or your spirituality as you define it, um, how do you free yourself from certain constraints upon that? Like seeing everything in a binary way, black or white, good or bad, just or evil. And that is, knowing and seeing that we contain all of it inside of ourselves is what is leading us to the 2027 theme. And we announced that a couple weeks ago on our Lionsgate Tarot workshop. The year of 2027's theme, drum roll please if you haven't heard it, is the year of the looking glass. So while 2026 is a year where we have a fire horse is galloping horse, which is connected to Gemini in Western astrology. And it's a 1 year. It resets this 9-year numerological universal year cycle. So it's a lot of seeds planted, which I definitely did in my garden, and just ideas and novelty and new things. But we're starting things. We don't always know what we're going to finish. We don't know what's coming. We don't know what the results are going to be. And 2027, if you add up the digits, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 7, it winds up being 11. And then that goes down to a 2. But when you have 11, 22, or 33, those are master numbers in numerology. So you keep them in. So it's 11/2. So we have double the ones as well as 2. It's also the year of the fire sheep. We have 2 fire years in a row. And then we get 2 earth years in a row. But the fire horse and the fire sheep, fiery energy, but with a much gentler creature. The sheep is associated with Cancer and the moon. And so it's like, how do we warm the hearth? And I'm saying like 11 to reflect, to connect. We can't go out there and say, who are you? What are you doing? Let me point the finger without having that finger also point back to ourselves. Now, when we announced this theme, I was like, oh my God, what is this going to bring up, for me? And how it's like, it's almost a little bit like unnerving when you pick a theme. I would definitely say my unbridled spirit this year has showed up in terms of just like this just desire to create beauty. I'm connecting to spirit through, the full Roy G. Biv spectrum. Like I've been obsessed with like getting the right colors together. I'm all about green, lilac, and orange. And, that's my current palette. It made its way to the books, of course, but just, I feel like I'm even just like arranging things in my space. In my solar return chart, I had a Libra rising this past year. I'm obsessed with making things beautiful, harmonious, aesthetic, and comfortable. It's been really fun for me. But, also just even allowing myself, and me and Ophi have talked about this a lot, like how do we talk about our culture, our history, our heritage, in the face of what's going on in the world? And we're Jewish. Our father is Israeli. He escaped Bulgaria as a child to become a refugee as a Sephardic Jew and was a refugee from age 2 in Israel. It saved his life. Um, our mother is a daughter of Holocaust survivors, so as boomers, Israel and Zionism was like a reclamation, a place for safety in a world that had been unsafe. And simultaneously, here we are at this time where everything's coming to a head. And all our lives, our parents talked about Israel and the Israel Arab War. And then we grew up in Detroit, and the very neighborhood that we lived in as children, Oak Park, which is right on the edge of Detroit, became a home to a wave of Iraqi immigrants who were escaping the Iran-Iraq war in the 70s. And so our classmates who spoke Arabic actually had a lot closer cultural connection than a lot of our American classmates. A bunch of Arab stores opened with the ingredients that we would shop for to make the food that our dad grew up eating. And so the unbridled spirit this year for me has been humanitarian, like embracing my humanitarian spirit. The looking glass is already starting to show up like, how do I reconcile, you know, loving my Jewish culture and heritage while also decrying and condemning the crimes against humanity that are being called them war crimes, genocide, all of the above that are happening in our name as Jews. And it's been coming like closer and closer to home since we announced the cover. And I'm just going to talk about it freely and openly because what I don't want to do and what I refuse to do is to become shamed and ashamed about my heritage. And it's easy for that to happen because there are shameful things happening in the name of Israel, and which is the state that represents our culture right now, whether, you choose to acknowledge its existence or not, it does exist. And, here we find ourselves. The world is now talking about something that has been a kitchen table and dinner table topic all our lives and seems to have no end or solution in sight. So my parents visited here. They're on an Alaskan cruise now. I'm gonna pick them up again on Saturday, and it was challenging because we have very different views. Fortunately, they're not at all pro the government. They're absolutely anti Netanyahu. My father hates Ben Gavir, who said that Israel should kill 30 to 40 Gazans every night because some of them are not even human. Like, disgusting, you know? Our mother actually runs an interfaith organization in Detroit, and our father participates in it, which is, I think something he probably never thought he would do. So they do unite with the Muslim community, the churches, which are primarily Black churches in Detroit. So they really are doing very interesting work. But for them, Israel is, they still see it as like the only safe place on the planet for Jews. Whereas younger Jews, many of us feel like it's making us more unsafe as it triples down on, the nationalism. So I don't have an answer for it. But I asked Claude, what is the most unbiased book I could possibly read about the 20th century to present history of, Israel and Palestine? And I found one that I'm really enjoying. It's called Enemies and Neighbors by Ian Black. And I'm only on chapter 6 right now. I've had to go back. I've been listening to it while I've been gardening. And I just ordered the print book because it's so dense with facts. What I've learned, and I'll share with you guys what I'm learning. Um, I've learned that both Jews and Arabs have been living in Palestine/Israel for thousands of years. I'm learning about the Zionist movement, Theodore Herzl and Chaim Weizmann, and how they did create a separation between Jews and Arabs. And, right now I'm learning about Tel Aviv being built. So, the tension was there before Israel even existed. I'm learning about the Balfour Declaration. Lord Balfour, an Englishman, got on board with Zionism and said he wanted, wanted a Jewish state to be established, but was it even really his land to give away? And I'm really just imagining the horror and threat and fear that the Arabs living there must have felt, knowing that, there was this support for their, homes being taken away. And also imagining just the trauma and PTSD that the Jews coming there must have felt after all the anti-Semitism in Russia and Romania and, later the Holocaust, but I'm not to that part yet. So it's like what I like about this book is that it's like so far one of the only ones that it's like I don't know, I just feel it's really necessary in this year of the unbridled spirit moving into the year of the looking glass to be like, okay, what was happening for my people? What was happening for their people? And where's that two of harmony and relationship going to come? I just don't know. And I don't know if I could figure that out. I mean, people have been trying to figure that out for years, but no one wants to compromise anything. And so much has been built. And so much has been destroyed. And, it's, it's really, it has made its way, this fight has made its way into the astrology community. We've been talking over the last few weeks about, the racial conversation that has entered the astrology community. I'm not going to get into what happened with that. If you want to know, listen back a couple episodes. We talked about it. We did a special episode on it. And it's still very unresolved. Ophi and I have decided not to go to the UAC conference. We found two wonderful people to give our tickets away to. It's just right now not, I want to stay home and work on the 2027 book in my garden and just feeling like a very fraught space. Not that I'm afraid to go into those, but I don't know. Anyways, it was just what the sacral energy of our human design said, not this year. So, but looking forward to hearing how it goes for people who are there. And I'm sure there'll be some awesome moments as well as some really intense ones. And, if it's worth sharing on the podcast, we absolutely will. So, uh, there have been astrologers calling for who have so some astrologers have gone in and looked at the software that many of us use, Astrolabe, Astro Gold, Time Passages, AstroSeek, and you know have requested that they add Palestine to the map. We made that request to Astrolabe, who, if you do a free chart on our website, if it doesn't have Con Eunice in there, it will soon. So they're working on that. I also had a very kind of unsettling experience while I was with my mom and dad this week. We were walking back from the grocery store, and my dad has, you know, a head of white hair. And this guy saw him on the street, was like, "Man, I love your hair. You've got an amazing head of white hair. Are you Italian?" Kind of fishing. And I knew it wasn't going to go well when my dad was like, "No, I'm from Israel," because he refuses to not say where he's from. For him, that's just where he is. That's who he is. He was there at the country's inception. He was drafted in the army. Being a proud Jew for him is an act of rebellion and resistance. And that's something that I'm really working on understanding and aligning with, even if I don't agree with all of his politics. It's very excruciating, but I'm not going to give up my family, my parents. That's just not an option for me. Anyways, the guy had weirdly enough lived in Israel and, you know, had done some justice work with a friend who was a queer Muslim. But then he decides to say to my dad, "Well, it's great that you guys are Jewish, but are you Zionists?" And a lot of people are asking, "Are you a Zionist? Are you a Zionist?" And that's their question, which I understand. They're asking, do you support what's happening in Israel now? The expansionism, the war crimes, the settlers in the West Bank who have been trapping Palestinians in their home. And the answer to that is hell no. But to be asked by a stranger on the street, like it literally was like, especially as Jews, and I just want to share this because I know some people who are listening probably do ask people, "Are you a Zionist?" And maybe feel like you're doing something like socially just by doing that. But Jews have a history of like being forced to wear a Jewish star on our during the Holocaust that says Jude on us, or being asked for our papers. And it's scary. It's to be, to have to justify, like, yes, I'm Jewish, but, and then say, but I'm not a Zionist. It's like qualifying our existence. And maybe that I'm not telling people what to do, but know that when you ask people that, it feels invasive, boundary crossing, and like you're forcing someone like to speak for things that the worst members of their culture, the crimes of the worst members of their culture, which, again, I'm the kind of person who will get into those conversations, but not everybody wants to. And when Jewish people hear anti Zionism, not all Jews hear it as, well, it's not the same as anti Semitism. For many Jewish people, especially older ones, my parents' age, it's really terrifying for them because that was their safe space, even though it's absolutely not the safe space for Palestinians, and horrible things were done. So in no way am I justifying that. This is a hard one to talk about, but it's kind of the way of the looking glass. So I'll have more to report as I keep reading Enemies and Neighbors and learn about the Ottoman Empire more and Zionism's roots. And it was a radical movement. It was a radical movement that then did harm to other cultures. We've come a long way in our understanding of culture since 1917, but we're still grappling with a lot of the same things. So here we are. And, this is all very eclipse corridor for me as well. You know, how do I talk about these things without people thinking that I am, you know, supporting the actions of the Israeli government? Because I'm absolutely not. But how do I talk about these things without then feeling like I'm betraying my own culture, that I'm fawning as a survival mechanism so that nobody hurts me because I'm Jewish? I have to let people know I'm a good Jew. I'm a good Jew. That's a bind that a lot of Jewish people find themselves in right now, and it's heavy. It's heavy, but also part of what's happening, part of the work that we're here to do with this Aquarius North Node and these eclipses. Like it's heavy, but it's also we can do hard things, we can do heavy things. And so we're in the midst of it, in the early phases of it. I just wanted to share that personal anecdote and that personal experience. I don't have a conclusion about what exactly to say or do with it, but knowing knowing that our listeners out there are multi-dimensional, pluralistic in perspective, it just felt like the right thing to talk about today. If you haven't heard, our 2027 horoscope book is on sale in only one format, our manifestation bundle. That is a limited time offer. The manifestation bundle contains the big book. The big book has all 12 signs and then one of the individual sign books. So you can get the big honking book to put on your table and read about your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your partner, your mom, your dad, get everyone sign, your children. And then you get one book that's just for you. And that one will also, this year, we're not doing the calendar pages. We're doing extended monthly forecasts. There will be an extended forecast each month for love, for career, and for wellness, as well as a couple of rituals for the new and full moon. So it definitely differentiates itself from the big book. It's more of like a personal journey and workbook. So you get one for your sign. People want to know if they should read for their rising sign or their sun sign. I really do think that's a personal choice at this point. We write thinking about you as your sun sign, but some people really do relate more to their rising sign. I would suggest getting this would be, but some people would disagree, but I would suggest getting the little book for your sun sign, and then you have the big book in there and you can read your rising sign, or vice versa. Just know that in the bundle, you'll get to check both. Then it also comes with our 2027 tote. We have a new tote design which has some Egyptian leanings to it. The great solar eclipse, August 2nd next year, is going to be in totality on over the in the Valley of Kings in Egypt, and we are going to be part of a retreat there. So I'll drop the link for that in as well. We aren't the organizers of the retreat, but anyone who comes through us, we will be hanging out with you there. So we'll get tours of the pyramids, a cruise on the Nile, where we'll have, beds laid out on the upper deck to witness the full 6 minutes of the eclipse with our eclipse glasses on. It's going to be phenomenal. We'll get to tour all the ancient sites. No, that doesn't come in the manifestation bundle, but we had a little Egypt theme going. Actually, our dad did his 23andMe, and we have Egyptian and Libyan roots. And he also had Italian in him. So we have quite the Mediterranean, North African, and Arab country range in our own history, which makes sense because the Sephardic Jews all did wander around there. I feel like this trip to Egypt is gonna bring up a lot of interesting spiritual and even maybe some cultural resonance. I'm excited. That's next summer though. So the manifestation bundle, sorry to meander, has the big book, individual sign book, the tote bag, as well as the digital version of the big book. So you can read it on your iPhone, iPad, tablet, whatever device you use. It'll have the crystal of the year and the a ticket to our webinar that we do every January, our Planet by the Planets webinar, and the digital calendar plus. So you can put all of the hotspot dates anytime there's a transit, an eclipse, Venus changing signs, etc. It'll populate your calendar and it'll give you little pop-up reminders so that you know, oh, it's full moon day today. And so all of that comes in the manifestation bundle. And until the end of the eclipse, Corridor, August 28th, you can get that for $88, which is the lowest price it'll ever be offered. So astrostyle.com/manifest for that. Astrostyle.com/manifest for the manifestation bundle. Makes a great gift too. So you will be the first ones shipped. We start shipping, books ship no later than December 1st, hopefully earlier this year. We always try for that and often succeed, but it'll get there in time. If you want it to get in time there in time for holidays, definitely grab the manifestation bundles as soon as possible because it's first come, first ship. Funny to talk about that in August already, but this last quarter of the year, it goes so fast, right? And then I'll also put the link for the Egypt trip in the show notes. All right, lastly, I'm going to wrap up with the human design for the week. We just entered this Monday, gate 29, which is the gate of saying yes and also the abysmal. And that takes place in the sacral center. The sacral is like your sacrum, your gut. And this is a week where you'll have an urge to say yes to things, where you're being asked to commit fully, even when you don't know exactly where you're heading. Commit to the process and experiences without certainty about the future. It's a persevering gate, and it lasts until August 22nd, early Saturday. And I think of it also, I remember when I did a landmark seminar years ago, the commitment seminar, they were like, throw your head over the wall and just figure it out from there. And that's what this feels like. It's like the adventure begins when you commit, when you don't give yourself an out and you commit yourself wholeheartedly to the experience. A sense of aliveness comes from saying yes to something. So say yes. That was a little jingle when we were kids, was say yes to Michigan. Say yes, yes, yes. Kind of sounded a little naughty there, but yeah, that if you're a Michigander of Gen X age, you might remember say yes to Michigan. So say yes to something that you're not 100% sure you know how to figure out, but your heart is definitely singing in regards to. Then August 22nd, the gate 59, the gate of sexuality and intimacy. So don't say Virgos are uptight because those early Virgos, if you're the end of Leo, last day of Leo, first few days of Virgo, Your sun is in the gate 59. I actually dated a Pisces who had his sun in gate 59, or his earth in gate 59. And he definitely was a sensual guy. That's all I have to say. Um, I was like, God, you're like a walking tantric healer. Kind of funny. So, all you early Virgos, you've got it. You've got that thing going on there. This primal energy isn't just about sex and reproduction. It's also about spreading your seed, creatively with your business ideas, with the deep connections. Like it's like this fertile, earthy, Virgo-y energy. So that's what we've got going on this weekend. So be careful what you say yes to, because you might wind up in bed with them by the weekend if you're following human design. Well, remember to get out and play, everybody, for this very last week of Leo season. Get out in the sunshine, bask, have some childlike wonder however you can. Maybe that means turning off the news, turning off those reminder alarms, turning off your fitness tracker, and just letting yourself indulge a little bit. We're going to be in Virgo season by the end of the week, and we'll be counting and analyzing everything again. So this is a moment to let your hair down, say yes, and I'll be back with my twin next week. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to AstroTwins Radio. If today's episode gave you an aha moment, we'd be over the moon if you left us a 5-star review. It helps fellow astrology lovers find us. And make sure to hit subscribe and follow us on iTunes and Spotify so you never miss an episode. Want the full visual experience? You can also watch the video version on our YouTube at AstroTwins-TV. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at AstroTwins and head over to astrostyle.com to read your free daily, weekly, and monthly horoscope that we write for you with love. Until next time, move with intention and let the universe meet you there.